Before getting into the movie review, we would like to warn the viewers that there will be scenes that will contain violence, heavy topics, and traumatic events. These scenes may be triggering, especially for Native audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hi, my name is Makita, and I identify as Afro-Caribbean and African American. My pronouns are she, her, hers.
Hi, I'm Shantae, and I'm Danette from New Mexico, and my pronouns are she, her, hers.
So, before we start this video, we just wanted to point out that our critiques are not meant to offend or disrespect Indigenous life and culture. Our job is to apply the certain scenes to the theoretical terms that we've been discussing throughout the semester while offering our opinions respectfully about the scenes in the movie.
Older Than America is about a woman named Rain who uncovers her past through visions. It was directed by Georgina Lightning, a Cree director and actress. This film reveals the truth about the horrors Native American children experience within Indian boarding schools at the hands of Catholic teachers, forced them to assimilate into what was known to be white culture. Rain, who was portrayed by Georgina Lightning, has visions that uncover the past and allows the people of the Fond du Lac Reservation to heal. Kill the Indian, save the man was a slogan that was utilized throughout the film, which portrayed the way that assimilation for Native children was recommended and promoted throughout the country.
So I'm going to start off by defining Dustin Tamakera's term recognizably Native. We've studied this throughout the course of the semester, and so recognizably Native consists of productions produced by Native film directors. It has an indigenous point of view, and most of the scenes and narratives are discounting and talking back at the recognizably Native stereotypes that non-Native people place onto Native characters.
Older Than America is Native produced, and the director, Georgina Lightning, allows for Native women to be included within Native films, which is why it's such a powerful thing, because in the past, concerning film history, Native women don't really have a voice, and they're not really included into the story rather than they're just objects in there. And Regina Lightning, with her indigenous cultures, that allows her to put on the screen.
The scene in the very beginning of the movie catches your eyes instantly. So when you see it, you see this gory man, and he has hooks in his chest, and they're performing a ceremony for him. And so you're left kind of confused, like, I don't know what's going on, but this is interesting. So it leaves you confused but intrigued at the same time.
So the next scene was set in a bar where John Goodfeather, Rain's fiance, is playing pool with a white male and his friends, and the white male compliments his skills at pool, and while doing that, he proceeds to call him Chief.
Hey, dude, you owe me $50 and a round of drinks.
Not so fast, Chief. About 2 out of 3.
Chief, that's a good one, dude. I don't think I've heard that one before. Just pay up.
Didn't mean anything by it. You're a guy just like you, working on the farm. He's the best of the bunch.
This scene shows John Goodfeather talking back to his white counterpart by making it known that Chief is not a word to address him by, and it was pretty cool seeing him deal with this kind of tiny problem, well, not really tiny problem, but deal with this guy in a humorous way.
So we later find out that this man is Rain's uncle, and he was killed. And so, as her ancestor, he's been guiding her and appearing in her visions, although she doesn't know who he is. So, it has an indigenous aspect in the fact that it shows Native people's relationship to their ancestors and how they can be guided in life. And it represents their spirituality. John Goodfeather befriended a geologist, and the geologist expressed to him that he needed a permit in order to study the boarding school lands because in the 1950s there was a major earthquake that killed a lot of the kids in the school. So, because he wanted to study this, John Goodfeather was expressing to him that he's a police officer, and so he could get the permit easier. So, when he goes to get the permit, the man who works at the Bureau of Indian Affairs, who is a white man, was very resistant and hesitant and did not want to give him the permit.
Come on, I'm the reservation police. It's cool.
You want the pass, or don't you? Here, get the door, will ya?
What am I waiting for?
Hey, I'm just doing my job here.
Your job is to write the freaking permit. I haven't got all day.
Okay, fine. But if there's a problem out there, it's on you.
Once he eventually got the permit, the geologist took the permit to the lands and was told by the man who works at the Indian Affairs that he had to leave and that this was private land.
You know what? I do have a permit.
There you go. Yeah, I issued this permit yesterday to Johnny Goodfeather.
Right.
Who are you?
I'm Luke Patterson, but Mr. Goodfeather obtained that for me.
Okay, where is he?
I don't know. What's the difference?
Well, the difference is your name's not on this pass. His is.
Why don't we just make a call and we can confirm my credentials?
Okay.
There's no
I don't want to
problem.
make any calls, okay? If you want a permit issued in your name, then you come by my office tomorrow and I'll issue you a pass. In the meantime, you got to wrap all this up, okay?
This scene represents John Goodfeather and the geologists having confronted corporate actors who took control over their lands. I love John Goodfeather's role in the scene because he really asserted his power and reclaims his rights to his own land by getting the permit for the geologist. It also shows the allyship between the non-indigenous character Luke Patterson, who is the geologist, and the native character John Goodfeather.
Next, I'm going to be talking about resurgence, and the baseline of resurgence is survival, and to go beyond that, any work has to go they have to confront colonial corporate actors, prioritize the relationship to the natural world, and reclaim cultural roots and identities.
In the movie, Rain's mother was really affected by shock therapy treatment because her sister, who decided to assimilate, and the priest teamed up in order to have her experience shock therapy, which ultimately led her in a nursing home. And in this scene, you see Rain and her mother interacting with each other through touch and eye contact because Rain's mom can't really communicate with her daughter that much. And so at this time, it's showing a flashback of Rain's mother, and she's looking at her sister and she's yelling. She's saying, what's going on? Why did you do this to me? And her sister was just thinking in her head, this is what's best for you. It was a very emotional scene to watch because I can't even imagine, going through shock therapy and not being able to communicate with my daughter anymore, and just the whole process of having my indigenous culture be stripped away from me by force and not by choice. So it was a very good scene.
The priest and Rain's aunt were planning to give Rain shock therapy treatment because they felt Rain was too attached to her cultural background. The auntie of Rain were plotting to give Rain shock therapy treatment because they felt Rain was too attached to her native culture, and that, you know, she found out that the priest allowed Rain's like totally, you know, like mentally stable mom, like allowed her to get shock therapy treatment. And Rain was experiencing several visions of her ancestors just like her mom did, and people thought, you know, thought both of them were crazy because of this. And she was taken to the hospital, and she realized what they were trying to do to her. And as she was locked in her hospital bed, after initially getting shock therapy, her deceased uncle Walter appeared in her room and undid the cuffs, and she was able to escape and start on her mission to getting her mom out of the treatment facility. And watching Rain escape was liberating. Like, escaping her allowed her to reclaim her roots and break the cycle of torture that her mother and uncle experienced through Indian boarding schools.
So Jolene Rickard's theory, screen sovereignty and visual sovereignty, talks about the right to self-determine their own Native people's own representation, and it's also reimagining the space of screen as an indigenous space. So that incorporates language, cultural practices, ceremonies, and humor.
Rain's fiance, Don Goodfeather, and his father still practice their indigenous traditions, whereas Rain's aunt practices Christianity. So John's family allowed Rain to be cleansed in their sweat lodge after she escaped from the treatment facility. The scene was extremely powerful because it depicted the authentic ways of indigenous peoples in a realistic way, and this contributes to screen sovereignty.
I am your Uncle Walter Many Lightnings. Your mother, my sister, has prayed this day would come. I am here to look over you, to help you understand your place in our family and our people. You see, Rain, when these new people came, they did everything they could to end our traditional ways of life. But there were things they couldn't take. Our dreams and our spirits. You have inherited your mother's strength. These new people, they knew if we followed her, that it would have been more difficult for them to convert us into their ways. You have been shown through these visions the truths of the past. Now it is time that you make your connection with the Creator. Let Him help you through these times of confusion. We have to learn to forgive these people for what they do not understand about our good way of life. We can't expect them to understand. Pray that one day they will. Then we can all heal together and get back to being a strong nation of traditional people. Always know that our Indian way of life is very simple. Continue to dream of healing and unity amongst our people. And one day, it shall come to pass.
Once Rain escaped the hospital and found out what was done to her mother by the priest, she confronted the priest in the basement of the old boarding school. And this was really one of the most important scenes because it represented resurgence in the most powerful way. So she literally fights the priest and makes him think about what he's done and holds him accountable. And the Native children who were killed in the boarding schools returned on the screen. And the priest was finally guilty, and he remembered everything that he did to the children. Everything that was done to the dead children was shown on the screen, which is why it was so powerful. And it was very important because it finally held the white people who were in charge of the boarding school accountable for everything that they did, all the torture that they caused to these Native children. And so I love seeing Rain fight the priest. To me, it was pretty badass. I mean, like, what woman do you know can say that they fought a priest? Like, that's pretty cool.
Once Rain addressed the people who abused her mother and her uncle, she could finally take her mother back home. when her mom comes back home, she's wrapped in a blanket, and there's music being played for her, and there's a ceremony going on. It was very heartwarming and a good way to end the story after, you know, seeing all the trauma that happened to the children at the Indian school, and the work that was done to suppress that history. And it was good to see the healing after all of that. And it proved, you know, that Indigenous culture still lives on, no matter how many people perpetuate the erasure of Native culture. One critique I have for the scene is when Rain's mother hugged her sister and forgave her. If my sister signed me up for shock therapy, I don't think I would forgive her so easily, but that's just me.
There was one scene where the man who was hesitant to give John Goodfeather the land permit was found dead. And he was found hung in the woods. And so it was revealed that a random Native man killed him in the film. And I felt like this scene was kind of like supporting that recognizably Indian role as a savage, because I just felt like it wasn't necessary. Like, the Native guy didn't have to kill him to like prove that, or like to reclaim his identity. I just felt like it wasn't that necessary, and it kind of tapped into that like savage role. Yeah, I know that wasn't Georgina Lightning's intention, but it was a bit. I didn't like how the Native man was portrayed in that specific scene. Although suicide is an important topic to address, I think that there wasn't enough time in the film to address the severity of the issue, and I feel like Georgina was trying to address too many issues at once, and it was just a bit messy in my opinion.
I never told this story until now.
No, go on.
So by the time I got in there, he'd already killed himself too.
That's tough.
Yeah. See, I never understood what could drive a person to do that. You know, let alone a family.
That happens around here a lot.
You know, the more I learn about this place and what happened here, it's starting to make a little more sense to me. The first day I arrived here, my friend appeared to me in the parking lot. I think he wanted me to be here.
I wasn't really a fan of that scene. I felt like I could have been good without seeing that scene. I just felt like if you're going to address suicide, take a lot of time out to really unpack this issue instead of just having one little scene and then moving on to the main narrative. I feel like it didn't correlate well with the main narrative.
I disagree. I think it was like very much needed and really impactful, because like it adds to the story that, you know, there's an issue with suicide on the reservation, and I feel like it wasn't too forced, but I can see like that it was just, you know, just put in there, mentioned like at least twice, and then like put it away to focus on everything else. One critique I do have is about the "Kill the Indian, Save the Man" quote that showed up.
All the answers you needed?
Yeah, I tried. I went to that boarding school. A fella came in there and told me I had to clear out. Whatever happened in that school anyway?
A lot of unresolved things up at that school. Kill the Indian, save the man. That was their motto.
Kill the Indian, save the man?
They tried to whitewash us Indians. Took us from our mother's arms, took the clothes right off our backs, burned them, put uniforms on us, wouldn't let us speak the language. They tried to beat the Indians right out of us.
That's tragic.
Tragic. Half the Indians died in these schools up here. The rest broken and confused with scars that will never heal. There are two ways to conquer a nation. Kill them, or take away everything that defines who they are.
Sounds like a Holocaust. How come I never read or learned about that in school?
Some stories never make the history books.
it was a bit too cliche for my liking, because I constantly hear it all the time when people talk about the Indian boarding schools. Like, it's very impactful, but for me, like, I always hear it, and it just seems like whenever I do hear it, it's just when other people are being educated about it. Like, it's like the first time hearing about the boarding schools, and I just wish that wasn't the case, and that a lot of people knew about it. Like, it was more well known rather than something like people discover like when they go to college. Like, it should be part of like curriculum in the United States, because there's a lot of like history to be addressed concerning indigenous peoples in North America, and just like learning more about this is like allows for more healing and understanding between non-indigenous people and indigenous people.
I don't know. I personally like the "kill the Indian, save the man" quote. I feel like that specific quote literally summed up the entire plot of the film, and I feel like it was important to have in there because that's such a known, recognizably Indian saying, and I just thought it was so important to be used in the film because it is reclaiming that quote and indicating that indigenous culture is powerful and will not be erased.
We also wanted to point out the connections that Older Than America has to the Carlisle Indian School. The first and second photo that Luke picks up are photos of a group of Apache children from the Carlisle Indian School. These photos are taken before and after going through the boarding school education at the Carlisle Indian School in 1886. These pictures were used for advertisement, showing off the differences that the Carlisle Indian School was able to make on Native children. Many of the other pictures in this pile were also taken at the Carlisle Indian School. At Dickinson College, located in Carlisle, PA, we know that this topic is very relevant to the area. Since the movie brings attention to the harsh conditions of the boarding schools, it's impossible to leave the connections to Carlisle go unnoticed. Carlisle Indian School served as a model for other boarding schools like the one in the movie. It's interesting to see that the Carlisle Indian School had such a big impact on the native boarding schools in the country that the photographs from the Carlisle Indian School were used in the movie, even though it was set in Minnesota, very far from Carlisle.
It also shows the allyship.
And so regular.
To the community.
This is Rain's uncle, her dead uncle, and he's her, what is he?
Brother.
Yeah. There was also a suicide scene where the geologist had a flashback of his native, of